Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Busy Little Minds. Today, I'm going to be presenting Life, Classification, and Cells. This presentation is grade level 6 to 7, and it covers the very basics of biology. The main topics that we're going to cover in this video are biological classification and organisms, organism characteristics, the classification hierarchy, kingdoms, the cell theory and cell structure, structures of cell, parts of cells and their functions, passive transport, active transport, cell metabolism. This section of the video is titled Biological Classification and Organisms, and it covers organism characteristics, the classification hierarchy, and organism kingdoms and the kingdom's characteristics. Every organism has these 6 characteristics. If something has these 6 characteristics, it is alive and therefore an organism. The first characteristic is that every organism is structured around the cell. This means that every organism has a basic unit of structure and function, which is the cell. Every organism is made of cells. The second characteristic of every organism is that they grow, change, and develop. All organisms also respond to stimuli. This means that they react to changes around them. For example, if you touch a cactus, you quickly pull your hand back. Every single organism consumes energy. We consume energy in the form of food. We require energy to survive. The fifth characteristic is that all organisms reproduce. Without this characteristic, species would die out very quickly. The sixth and final characteristic is that all organisms evolve and adapt over time. Without evolution, species would eventually die out, and adaptation is crucial to the survival of all species. Now let's look at 2 examples and decide if they are organisms or not. I encourage you to pause the video and try to find out yourself. The first picture is of a computer. A computer could, theoretically, be structured around a cell as its basic part. But computers can't grow, change, or develop by themselves. So the possibility of a computer being a living thing is already ruled out. But let's go through the other rules just for good measure. Computers do respond to stimuli, clicks, the trackpad moving, etc. But computers consume energy, but computers do not reproduce. Computers evolve and adapt, but not on their own. The second picture is of a jellyfish. A jellyfish is structured around a cell. A jellyfish also grows and develops. They start out as polyps and grow until they become medusas, not the Greek mythological character though. They respond to stimuli. If you poke a jellyfish, it will probably sting you. Jellyfish also reproduce. Jellyfish have also evolved. If they hadn't, they wouldn't be alive today. The classification hierarchy is a method of organizing organisms in specific to vague categories. The 8 categories are called species, genus, family, order, class, phylum, kingdom, and domain. I have organized these categories in smallest to largest. The larger the bar in the pyramid, the more unspecific it is. The smaller the bar, the more specific it is. As you get to more specific categories, there are less and less results. The example that I used for this demonstration is borrowed from everything you need to know about science in one big fat notebook, the complete middle school study guide. The example I borrowed was of a cat. In the smallest bar, the species bar, there is just a domestic cat. In the genus bar, there is a domestic cat and a wild black cat. In the family bar, there is a lion, a wild cat, and a domestic cat. In the order bar, there is a wild cat, a domestic cat, a bear, and a dog. In the class bar, there is a bear, a dog, a person, a domestic cat, a wild cat, and a mouse. In the phylum bar, there is a human, a wild cat, a domestic cat, a mouse, a bear, and a fish. In the kingdom bar, there is a bear, a mouse, a wild cat, a domestic cat, a fish, a dog, a slug, and a human. In the final bar, there is a mushroom, a cactus, a slug, a fish, a human, a fly, a mouse, a domestic cat, a wild cat, a bear, and a seagull. This example demonstrates that as the bar size increases, more results are included. The broadest categories have many results, across the different kingdoms too. There are 6 different kingdoms that scientists classify organisms into. Plants are multicellular, which means that they are made of more than one cell. The cells of plants have cell walls. Plants are autotrophs, which means that they make their own food. Plants use the process of photosynthesis to make their food. There are many ways that plants can reproduce. Plants can carry seeds in flowers or in cones. Plants can also reproduce using spores. They can also reproduce by cloning themselves. Animals are also multicellular. The cells of animals don't have cell walls because they have cell membranes. They are heterotrophs. The word heterotroph means other nutritive. This means that animals eat other living or dead organisms to feed themselves. Animals can be vertebrates, which means that they have spines, or they can be invertebrates, which means that they don't have spines. Fungi can be single-celled or multicellular. All fungi are heterotrophs. Fungi reproduce using spores. Like plants, fungi have cells with cell walls. Protists are mostly single-celled, and they can be heterotrophs or autotrophs. Archaebacteria are all single-celled. Archaebacteria usually live in and can survive in extreme environments, such as the bottom of the sea, the surface of the moon, harsh desert, etc. Eubacteria are all single-celled. Eubacteria make up the majority of bacteria. Eubacteria are a mix of heterotrophs and autotrophs. The next section is called cell theory and cell structure. Cell theory was first developed by Rudolf Virchow, Theodor Schwann, and Matthias Schleiden. Cell theory states that all organisms are made of one or more cells. The cell is the basic unit of structure and function, and every cell comes from an existing cell. In addition to these basic principles of cell theory, I would like to mention some additional information about cells that you may find useful. There are 2 main types of cells, called prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Eukaryotes have a membrane-bound nucleus, mitochondria, and organelles. Prokaryotes do not have any of these parts. Eukaryotes are more complex and are found in protists, fungi, animals, and plants. Prokaryotes are less complex and are found in archaebacteria and eubacteria. The table shown here describes what I have just said. The cell parts that are written will be explained in detail in the next slide. Now it's time to review parts of a cell. In this slide, I've got 2 diagrams, one of an animal cell and one of a plant cell. Each part of the cell has arrows and/or bubbles dictating what that part is called. As we go over each part, I will be explaining the function of every part. Now, let's actually go over each of these parts. The first layer of a cell is the cell wall, but only plants, algae, fungi, and some bacteria have cell walls. The cell wall is a tough and rigid outer layer that protects and shapes the cell. Animals don't have cell walls because most have skeletons instead. Many cell walls are made of a carbohydrate called cellulose. The second layer of a cell is the cell membrane. All cells have cell membranes. The cell membrane is a layer on the outside of a cell that holds the cell together. The cell membrane is semi-permeable. It lets some materials in and keeps others out. Now we get to the inside of the cell. The biggest layer we notice that is inside of the cell is the cytoplasm. Inside the cell wall and membrane, all of the structures, organelles, and activities are contained in the cytoplasm. The structure of the jelly-like substance called cytoplasm is held by the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton is made of thin protein fibers and hollow protein tubes. Inside the cytoplasm, there are many different parts that each do their separate vital jobs inside the cell. Ribosomes are the protein-making factories in a cell. Ribosomes are directed by genetic material from the nucleus to make certain proteins. The nucleus is the control center of the cell. It holds the chromosomes, DNA strands, which are basically just instruction manuals for the optimal running of the cell, and the making of proteins. The nucleus also contains the nuclear membrane, which is similar to the cell membrane, and the nucleolus, which makes ribosomes. After that, we notice the large sac inside the plant cell, the vacuoles. The vacuoles in a plant cell are much larger than the ones in the animal cell. The circle-shaped part in the cell is the lysosome. The lysosome breaks down food, cell waste, and foreign particles. After that, there's the mitochondria. The mitochondria release energy in food by reacting with oxygen. Attached to the nucleus is the endoplasmic reticulum. The endoplasmic reticulum takes its strange shape from folded membranes, and it processes and moves materials. The Golgi bodies sort proteins and other products from the endoplasmic reticulum, then distribute them to the right place. The cell part, which looks like a cell phone, is called the chloroplast, which is exclusively in plant cells. The chloroplast is a food production structure. It contains chlorophyll, a green pigment that makes plants look green. The next section is called cell metabolism and transport. Cell transport. In cell transport, there's two different types, active transport and passive transport. In passive transport, there's a few types here. But let's first talk about the definition of passive transport. The definition of passive transport is the transportation of materials in and out of a cell without energy. And there's a few different types here. For diffusion, I've shown a little illustration that I used from Wikipedia. And here, there's a bunch of molecules in high concentration illustrated here. They're all compacted together. And soon, they spread out to find equilibrium. This does not require energy. There's another type of passive transport called osmosis. Osmosis is a specific type of diffusion. Osmosis only occurs in a semi-permeable membrane. Osmosis usually refers to the movement of water. The last type of passive transport is called facilitated diffusion. Facilitated diffusion is a specific type of diffusion where transport proteins on the cell membrane allow substances in without energy. Now let's talk about active transport. Active transport is the transportation of materials in and out of a cell with energy. This works by using a transport protein called adenosine triphosphate, ATP. This ATP binds with molecules that want to enter the cell, using the cell's energy. When a molecule is moving against its concentration from an area of low concentration to high concentration, it requires energy. Finally, let's conclude this presentation with cellular metabolism. Cellular metabolism incorporates all the chemical reactions that keep the cell and us alive. There are three types of cellular metabolism: photosynthesis, cellular respiration, and cellular fermentation. Photosynthesis is the chemical reaction a plant carries out from sunlight. It does this with the chemical chlorophyll. Photosynthesis converts sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration is the opposite of photosynthesis. Glucose in food reacts with oxygen, creating carbon dioxide and energy. Fermentation is another chemical reaction that releases energy through the breakdown of food. When enough oxygen is not available, the cell breaks down glucose without the help of oxygen and produces adenosine triphosphate, ATPs. Since the glucose is not reacting with oxygen, it is not producing carbon dioxide as a byproduct. Instead, it is producing lactic acid. Too much lactic acid buildup causes cramps and muscle burns. If you enjoyed this video or it helped you pass a test, give it a like. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching!